All right. I think we are live. We are live. Hello, I'm Alex, and welcome to my fitness channel, Level 8 Vegan. Not really about being vegan, but more about IT, health, and fitness. And with me, I have Rich Weil, who I've known for like 20 some odd years.
That's true.
And yeah, really, you started out as a client. I built a lot of the stuff that you use today. I am your webmaster of sorts,
You have always been
but I've been for a while,
for a long
um,
time. You
and I've
saved
kind
the
of
day
watched.
many times.
Yeah, I guess, and
Oh,
I've
you
kind of
did.
watched your program from the side. Like I've never participated in it, but I've seen how many lives you've sort of changed over the years. So
Yeah.
it's a pretty
Yeah.
interesting thing. So I thought it'd be pretty cool to kick off this channel with, kind of talking to you about health and fitness, especially for IT people. I think the issue that we all have in IT is that we're very focused on our work. So, I'm always thinking about like what am I going to learn? What certification am I going to take? If I'm writing some piece of code or something like that, I can punt on the exercise and sleep and other things in favor of getting that work done because I
Yeah.
enjoy it. It's something that I like to do.
Right.
Um, and so majority of my life, career, whatever you want to call it, it hasn't been healthy. Like I've been a 3 pack a day smoker up until October 23rd, 2009. And then I replaced that with running a year later.
I remember.
Yeah. And, and diet has never been good. Pizza and, energy drinks and coffee. And I mean, I used to work when I lived in New York. I used to commute about 3 hours a day. I used to live in upstate New York, commute
Right.
to Stamford, Connecticut. From Stamford, Connecticut, I would leave the job and go to New Jersey. I taught at Bergen Community College, so I'd go there from
I
like
didn't know
6
you
to
did
10.
that. That's
Yeah,
where I grew
for
up.
for like 12 years.
That's right where I grew up.
It's a nice area. It's
BCC.
yeah,
Yeah, it was like
BCC is great.
it was right in Paramus, but it was
Yep,
the next town over.
right.
Yeah.
And so now it's 10 o'clock. I get out of BCC, and it's another hour to get home to Middletown, New York, and then
I
I have
remember.
side projects.
I
So
remember your life. I
yeah,
feel like I've actually been on the journey with you. I followed your fitness and health career. Uh, I feel like I do know you pretty well in
yeah,
the
it's
terms
been
of
dismal for a
this.
number of years. I think I finally kind of dialed it in November. Um, so anyway, here we are. So Rich, why don't you introduce yourself,
Okay.
say a couple of things about what you're doing and why and how long you've been doing it, and I'll put your slide up here.
Okay. So I am Rich Weil. I am in going into the 45th year of my career. I have a master's degree in exercise physiology, and I am a certified diabetes educator, which is a credential that actually means something in the medical community. And I have been a CDE since 1987. I took the exam the first year. So I started my career really working more with diabetes. After I finished graduate school, I started working on an inpatient diabetes unit, and I was working there part of the time, and then I was working at some other hospitals consulting, and I really made a big name for myself in diabetes. I was writing dozens of articles and traveling all over the country, speaking and teaching um, health professionals how to integrate exercise with diabetes because really nobody knew. And all the doctors, in the endocrinologists in particular in New York City, were sending me um, their patients with diabetes because they didn't know really what to do about the exercise part, because exercise has an insulin like effect, meaning that it lowers blood sugar and it can lower it 100 points in 20 or 30 minutes. And even if you're not hypoglycemic, like below 70 milligrams per deciliter, if let's say you drop from 180 to 90 or 80 even, you will feel that, but you may not be truly hypoglycemic. Anyway, I was really good at, I was working with elite athletes, Olympians, and helping them adjust their insulin levels and how much they were injecting and what they ate so that we could get their blood sugar to a certain level. So let's, for instance, if they were going to do a triathlon in the morning, we would want their sugar to be around 180 in the morning before the event, because it would drop so much. And so it was really more art than science, and I was good at it. So they would send me all of their patients. So I did that for a couple decades. And it was a great part of my career. I mean, I traveled everywhere. I was telling someone the other day, I remember I was at a place one time and I felt like some rock star or something, because I literally did not know what town I was in. I was in somewhere in upstate, and I just like, oh my God, I really don't remember where I'm at. So anyway, then I was asked to do some studies on weight loss. Get involved with that, and I started running groups and teaching people about physical activity, exercise, some diabetes, because some of the patients had diabetes. But I found the work more dynamic than, frankly, working with diabetes. I think, part of it was that I had done diabetes for a long time and it was sort of getting routine. And working with weight loss, really, you had to really get inside people's heads. And this is a chronic disease that we're treating, weight loss. And so I really transitioned to pretty much all weight loss. I still did some diabetes. So I was working at all of the weight loss clinics in town. I always was an independent contractor. And then I started working at Roosevelt Hospital in New York City. And we were at a place called the Van Italy Center for 10 years, and then it closed. And I was asked by Dr. Xavier Pissigny, who is an icon of the 20th century in the field of obesity research. And he was at the sister hospital, and he called me up and he said, look, Rich, I'd like you to come uptown at 114th Street in New York City, where I lived. And I want you to start the program here at our research center, the weight loss program. I want you to design it. I want you to run it. And I jumped at the opportunity. And
that was St. Luke's?
That was at St. Luke's, right. The sister hospital was Roosevelt. So, and to have Dr. Pissigny do that it was unbelievable. Truth, it was like he was one of the most important people in the field for.
That's
ever.
like me meeting Bill Gates.
It would kind of really be like that. I mean, he was the president of every medical society, the Diabetes Association, everything. And I remember when he interviewed me and he was looking at my CV and he looked up at me and he said, you wrote all these articles? And this guy has like 600 peer-reviewed publications, but he was impressed with me. And I was like, knocked my socks off. Great guy. And he became sort of a mentor. He's about 30 years older than me. And anyway, I ran the program there successfully for 25 years. 92% of the people lost weight. We had I designed
That's
it.
That's a huge number, because
it's huge. No one believes me.
Yeah, you're not talking about like a couple of hundred people. You're talking about thousands.
Yeah, no, it was unbelievable. Truthfully, people couldn't believe it. They didn't believe me. And when I designed it, I said, we're going to make the groups closed, which means if somebody leaves, we don't replace them. Because I knew that what you had to do for people to lose weight, you needed to give them structure, accountability, and continuity. And if you had people coming and going, which was the case in every place I worked, but I wasn't in charge, so I couldn't change it. When I told people that model, that clinical model, that if somebody leaves, we're not replacing them, they told me that I would be out of business in 6 months. That was 25 years ago, and I'm still doing it because I knew that this is a chronic disease. It's an addiction to food for many. And people have suffered, and they needed, they came to our door with really chaotic thoughts about food and eating and exercise and everything. And if you give them a program that's chaotic, like what's going on in their head, like all that dissonance, then it's not going to work. So
Yeah.
I knew it would work. I knew it would, and it has, and it's been wonderful. And I swear, somebody emailed me today and just said, you have changed my life and saved it, and you are doing exactly what you were supposed to be doing for your career. And I'm not tired of it. 44 years. When the hospital closed the program, I was sort of retired for 2 months, and I just said, I was sitting at a local place having lunch in the middle of the day after going to the gym, and I said, this is terrible. So I called my accountant, and I did. This is true. Called my accountant. I said, Edna, how do I start a business? She gave me the name of a lawyer, made an LLC, and I sat and I started to think, what am I going to call it? And I sat down with myself and I said, what is the thing I say the most? The thing I say the most is, you're going to transform yourself, or we're going to help you. Our tagline is sort of, let us help you transform you. And so I called it transformation. And instead of weight loss, I called it weight control, because it really just wasn't about weight loss. We were really helping people transform themselves in control. And because control was at the essence of this. If you really think about it deeply, people have a sense of loss of control over their impulses, over food, over eating, over being sedentary, all sorts of things. So that's what made the most sense to me, and that's what we called it, transformation,
Yeah.
weight control. And
Yeah, I remember we went through a couple of domain name changes. It was
we did.
weight loss, and then it
We
was
did. I used weight loss at
control.
first, and then I thought about it, and I said, wait, this is really not what we're doing. We're not just
Yeah.
helping people lose weight. On the website, you saw the woman. She was like over 300 pounds. She lost 165 pounds. She ran 5 marathons.
Marathons. Yeah, I saw
And,
that. And that other gentleman, Mark,
and Mark,
I think his
the
name.
guy
Yeah.
is like a monster. And then, there's another fella, and he came to us because he could not fit in to the harness to go skydiving. And this is all he wanted to do. And I was on board. I was side by side with him. And guess what? He lost 67 pounds, and he could fit in the harness. And he sent me a picture of him. Like, he was hooked up to an instructor.
I think it's on the website.
It's
I
on the website.
remember. Yeah, I remember working with that picture.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about your program is first of all, it's lengthy, right? It's 26 weeks, I think, or 52 weeks.
Well, yeah,
but it is an intensive. Like, you're not pushing everybody to, eat a can of peas a day and nothing else,
no. In fact,
and work out 44 hours a day.
No. So the way it's set up is that we have a psychologist, a registered dietitian, myself doing the exercise physiology part. And our philosophy in terms of what you were just talking about is that we don't want people to feel hungry, deprived, or restricted. Because the moment that you do that, they're going to rebound. Nobody can sustain that kind of thing. And they've all been through it. And and we kind of unnerve them a little bit by our approach. We're much more practical and flexible, and it helps because they don't feel shamed. They don't feel like they're failing, because we're not asking them to do something that they simply can't do, right? And it just contributes to the feeling of failure. I screened every single person who came through that program, every one of them individually, and always it was isolation, self-isolation, low self-esteem, self-loathing, shame, and they all felt that. And I was really sensitive to it, and we repaired that. We helped them. We were really serious about it. It was evidence-based. We were doing the research, and we were implementing it. And so people were coming weekly. At the beginning, we had 52-week program, because it was the research center. It was part of our mandate, and we were much busier at the time. This was way pre-COVID. So people had to come from all 5 boroughs of New York City, and they came from Connecticut and New Jersey, and they would commute in, and they would sit in that room for 75 minutes with us, and we'd have fun. And sometimes it was, people would think it's like group therapy. Well, sometimes it was therapy-ish. We had to get to the core issues that
And that's
people,
what you do today too,
and
right?
we do
So
exactly
the
the same. I'm
groups
not
are
doing
the same,
anything
except
different.
they're on Zoom now instead of
Yes,
in
that's
person.
the only thing. But we had a little experience at the hospital because COVID
COVID.
hit in 2020, and
Yeah.
so the hospital wouldn't let us bring patients in, rightfully so. So we went to Zoom, and so we learned it. So then when they closed us, we were still on Zoom. So I just took it on Zoom with me.
And it's interesting why you were closed, by the way. I guess the unofficial reason is because it didn't help with the bariatric surgeries and things of that
Yeah,
nature.
it's a little political. I probably shouldn't speak too much.
Yeah,
They might be listening,
we can
but
drop it.
it wasn't good. But you know what? I have to say, it turned out really well for me because I'm in charge. My name's on the door. I feel the responsibility, and I've gotten. I didn't like administration that much, and I didn't like people working for me and everything. I just was like, but you know what? I have a great staff. I interviewed all of them, and I, the dietitians I have working for me are fantastic. I love working with them. The psychologist is unbelievable. We're very collegial. We share information. And they've got great hearts, and they're committed, and they're educated, and I'm not going to hire anybody who really can't do it and doesn't have the credentials and the experience. So, that's a charm, frankly.
Yeah.
So, I have a few little administrative snafus, but otherwise, I'm still doing what I do. I'm
Yeah.
still running groups. I love running groups. When I was at the hospital, we'd do 3 a night, and by the third one, I was more revved up than the first, and everybody else was like falling off their chairs. But this is just a passion for me, and I just feel the suffering and have felt it for a really long time. And someone was asking me the other day, could I guess people's weight? And I said, no, not even close. I must have weighed 10 million people in my career, right? And I would write it down. And if you asked me an hour later what they weigh, I wouldn't know. And if I was like at the circus where, you guess somebody's weight, I would be off by 30 pounds. The number is meaningless to me, really. It's really the person. And I just said this to this person today that, I just feel privileged for 44 years that people have allowed me into their lives. And not everybody gets to say that. And I have hundreds of testimonials, and it's really wonderful. And I'm not quitting. I really like it. And
Nice.
we're really helping people. And
Yeah.
I understand the science. I have all the background in that, but the psychology part of it is so important. It's like a intersection between the biology and the psychology, and you have to understand both. So,
I've
your
learned
body
that
wants
last year, actually.
You what?
I learned that last year.
How'd you learn it?
Well, I mean, I've been running now for well over 10 years, right? And so I
Right.
run, I don't know, 15 to 20 miles a week, something like that. Last year, I decided I was going to use the tonal machine, the strength training
Right.
that's in the office behind me
Yeah.
over there.
Uh-huh.
And I did a year of it. Like every week I did 3 to 5 sessions on that thing. And I hated strength training. I never wanted to do it before. And that thing totally changed my mind. Like I'm totally on board. And that's something that's mental. That's not a physical thing.
No doubt.
Yeah. Then I wasn't losing weight. I was 252, I think, back just before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And I just got angry with myself, and just something turned off. I said, I'm just starting today. I'm not, I'm not, I'm going to do my thing now. And I didn't ask you. I just went off on my own because I made you watch that movie, The Game Changers. And in that movie, there's a Bruce Lee reference, right? You kind of absorb what is useful, discard what is not, and then
Right.
add your unique flavor to it. So I've been doing that for years, even before the movie. But it was nice to see that in the movie because it's like, oh, that's what I'm doing. So,
Yeah.
and
What I get it. I mean, it's how we run our program. It's
but it is a mental thing. It's like until
completely.
I did, if I wouldn't have gotten angry with myself, I wouldn't have made that switch, and I'd probably still be in the same boat. But since I mean, I think it was Thanksgiving week that I started. I've lost 35 pounds, right? My running improved. I'm running like 40 plus miles a week now.
Yeah.
My tonal is broken, so haven't done anything on it for the last couple of weeks, but that's going to get fixed next week.
No, you've
So
lost a significant percent of your body weight. I mean, that's how, when we would do research, we always looked at percent to equalize everything. Because if you have a 300-pound person and then they lose 50 pounds and a 200-pound person who loses 50, the percent is different. And so whenever we would do analysis or anything, we always would look at it like that. You have lost quite a bit.
And I get DEXA scans done, so I know
Yeah.
I've kept the muscle, and I've
Yeah.
actually more than got rid of more than half of my visceral fat, which is huge.
So, there's a few things. One is that, I think people, they commonly make the mistake that, just start exercising, you'll lose weight. But what
Nope.
we really know about it is that exercise doesn't help people lose weight.
No.
And in fact, in our program, whether it was the 52-week or the 26-week program, we didn't start the exercise for 8 to 10 weeks because we were asking people to make so many other changes in, meal planning and, and we put a lot, I wouldn't say we put a lot of burden on them, but we collaborated with them. We didn't want to just hand them a diet because everybody's done that. And that doesn't work. I mean, we had 1,500 calorie diets on our website. You could go, but that wasn't it. We had to get inside their heads and help them. And so we wouldn't start exercise right away, which they were relieved because, they'd see me and they'd get nervous when I'd walk in. And then when I would walk in after like the 10th week, I would say, they were expecting me to say, okay, we're going to start training for the marathon. But no, I would take the approach that we're going to take you from right where you are, look through the universe, see how you move or you don't move. And let's just make some intentional changes in what you do now. So, and that was the approach that worked.
And so is it like because what I found is the small things, so when that switch went off in my head, I decided, well, it's not like a diet. So I'm not doing something for a month or 2 months. It's a permanent change. So whatever I do, I have to make it last and stick. So it's these little things that I've adjusted that kind of, is making it work.
Our approach has been that we want you to do whatever it is you're doing until it stops working. We'll help you find something else, and then you can always go back. Like people are very all or nothing. It's like if it doesn't work, then that's the end. I said, no. We're fighting this sort of, you and I have talked about this a lot, all or nothing thinking, this perfectionistic thinking style, and it's like got to be perfect. It's not. It's progress, not perfection.
Yeah, you've told me. In fact, this was probably back in January, and I still have it on my list of stuff to do. Told me to create a video, probably for this channel, where I talk about my accomplishments, because we were talking about the dead hang, right? And remember, I was 20 seconds and then I'm done. And then there was one day where I went up and I was like up there for like 40 seconds, 50 seconds, whatever it was. And I'm like, well, it's still not 2 minutes. And you were like, take the win.
Honestly, Alex, this is the most insidious thinking style that we have. It prompted me.
Talk a little bit about that, because
I will.
I don't fully understand it.
I could talk about this forever. Let me say this first.
We don't have forever, but
if you go online and you type in quotations, you'll get a famous person quotes, everybody. I made a quotation that fits this perfectly. It's nobody feels as good about losing a pound as they feel bad about gaining a pound.
True.
Right. Well, that is unhelpful. And what ends up happening is you end up beating yourself up and you deplete your resilience, which is the most important factor in losing weight. In other words, can you recover from adversity? Right? And if you step on the scale, because the scale, it can look like a random number generator. I mean, your weight can fluctuate 3 to 4 pounds every day. And if, let's say, you weigh only once a week and you step on it, who knows? You could have weighed less the day before, but you don't know. So you set yourself up almost like, if it's not going to go the way you want it to, people would have these irrational thoughts like, oh my God, I'll never lose weight again. That's the classic sort of perfectionistic
So
awfulizing.
how do you get around it? Because I mean, it's definitely something that
Well,
I struggle with.
right. So, we use a sort of traditional cognitive behavior therapy model. So it goes like this, pretty simply. It's the ABCs. So you have an activating event. You step on the scale, and the scale doesn't go in the direction you want. So now your arousal is really high. You're upset, and you you go from the activating event to the consequences. So A, B, C. B is the belief. But that's not what people do. What they do is they go from the A to the C. And there's consequences, both emotional and behavioral. So you step on the scale, you're not happy, you might even be devastated. So I like to say to people,
Well,
listen,
that
there,
happened to me this morning, as a matter of fact. I stepped on the scale and it was, I think, 3 pounds heavier than the day before. And I just quickly got off it before it fully registered because I'm like, no, I don't want that number.
yeah, right. Right, I understand. Well, we want people to think like a scientist, and we teach people to do that. And then they need to hear my voice, and they say, "Oh yeah, he's right. It can fluctuate 3 to 4 pounds in one day." But what ends up happening instead is that experience, you have that experience. It's reminiscent of 100 times before or 1,000 times before, and you skip over your thought, and you go right to the consequences, the emotion. You're pissed off or you're devastated, and then what else would you do with your behavior consequence but eat? And now you have what we call a secondary disturbance, because you've eaten in response to the feeling, and now you feel bad about doing that. So it's a secondary, and so it cycles and it cycles and it cycles. And that's why some people, when they weren't in our program or before our program, and this is very common, they that cycle would continue for weeks, months, or even years. And it would not be uncommon to hear somebody, I would say, just what I just said now, it could go on for weeks, months, or years, and you wake up 3 years later and you're 65 pounds heavier, and you wonder what happened. And this happens all the time. So we bring it back to the present, and what we do about it is we talk about the thought you had when you stepped on the scale, not the feeling. There's nothing wrong with feelings, but these feelings are driving your behavior. You're responding, your emotional eating, whatever you're doing, you want to, you're under the perception that if you eat, you'll feel better. For the moment, you might, but in the long term, it's not effective. So what we do is we bring it back to, what do you think when you stepped on the scale? I want you to, and we have to sort out the difference between your feelings and your thoughts, and people are not good at that.
Yeah, I like what you just said kind of threw me for a loop. I mean,
Right.
I'm not
Exactly.
sure what it means.
Okay. So people, well, if you say something like, I feel like going to the movies tonight, that's not a feeling, but that's
That's a
that's
thought.
the language that we use, right? I mean, it doesn't sound crazy, but when it comes to losing weight, you have to be very clear about what's a feeling and what's a thought, because it's the thought that drives your feelings. So you step on that scale and you say you're devastated. Well, devastation is when a tornado lands on top of your roof and you have no house left. That's devastating. It could be disappointing that you didn't lose weight. I'm with you. I agree. But the disappointment doesn't last that long, not like devastation. So we challenge your thinking and we ask you to ask yourself three questions. Is it true what you're thinking? Is what you're thinking helping you? And is what you're thinking being kind to yourself? And
That's another thing I have a problem with. The kind to yourself. I don't necessarily get that
so
part.
here's how it is. Resilience is number one, and tied for second is lack of self-compassion and this perfectionistic thinking style. This all or nothing. It's all or nothing. Now, we call that maladaptive perfectionism. There is adaptive perfectionism where somebody could shoot for the stars, but they don't reach the stars, but they're okay. They don't torture themselves, they don't beat themselves up, they don't go eat. They just move on. That is adaptive. That's how we like to say it. It works, right? And they like to set goals for shooting for the stars. That's great. As long as they understand that if they don't, and they do understand that. But for the people who shoot for the stars and then they don't, they feel cruddy. And self-efficacy, the belief that you can, is one of the best predictors of behavior change. So if you step on that scale and you feel devastated, your self-esteem and your self-efficacy decreases. And when that happens, you tend to run yourself down, you deplete your resilience, and you can't bounce back. Every human being I've ever met is fallible. Every single one. Everybody's going to go off the rails at some point. Everybody's going to make a mistake at some point, intentional or unintentional. Doesn't matter. I don't even believe in that whole idea that people sabotage themselves. No, nobody does that intentionally. I mean, it doesn't make any sense from a kind of, the organism would not survive if that was the case, right? So we don't think that's what's happening. So we must address the thinking. And if we can, and we do, it suddenly starts to dawn on them that, wait a second, my feelings really aren't fitting the facts here. Like, it's disproportionate. I'm having much too much arousal. And it's because of my thoughts, because I'm not thinking truthfully. It isn't true. It's not helping me. And it's not being kind. With self-compassion, lack of it, we get right to the bones of it. Very simple. You say to somebody, would you talk to a friend in need the way you talk to yourself? No. Most people say no. I mean, they wouldn't be as cruel. They just wouldn't do it. But yet they do it to themselves. And I think this is a really complicated thing because, number one, people are dealing with a biological and a neurobiological chronic disease. Nobody woke up one day and said, hey, this is going to be really cool. I'm going to have a problem with my weight. I'm going to have problems with food and cravings, and I want to be addicted to food, and I want to gain weight. Nobody does that, right?
Well, I mean, you also have to look at what your environment is like. I mean, we're bombarded with, like I'm vegan, right? So I kind of went the opposite direction of what everybody else is doing. I have my reasons for doing that too. It was originally, in 2016. It's been 8 years now. It was because my dog died. I was grieving for my dog, and I'm like, well, I can't eat any meat anymore. And like 10 days later, I realized, geez, first of all, not only am I not hungry, but look at all the energy I have, and I was I didn't have brain fog. Like a lot of it cleared up a lot of things for me, and I was just as a vegetarian. And
Yeah.
then so I went that route. I started looking at it more and more, and then like of course you get sucked into the vegan movies, like Game Changers. There's another one called What the Health, and I
Right.
remember that one clearly because there's it opens with a scene of a mother feeding cigarettes to her kids, and the cigarettes are really bacon. I mean, it's a carcinogen, right? So it's the same. So I'm like, oh. I've been lied to now all my life. I've been lied to, and then you realize that, yeah, the marketing, like they sell you the Baconator, they sell, they sell you all this stuff. It's constantly on TV.
Yeah.
Very likely to go and find fast food versus
Right.
something to eat. And I think that also that doesn't help. That doesn't
No.
help.
So, what you bring up is really interesting because, for 30 years, I have been saying that food is an addiction. Back in the 1980s, I read a book by Alan Marlatt. He was the leading psychologist in the world on alcohol addiction. And I read his book called Relapse Prevention. And I could have easily just crossed out the word alcohol every time it appeared and wrote food. And it fit. It fit perfectly.
Salt, fat, and sugar.
Well, any whatever dynamic was going on with somebody with alcohol addiction was going on with food addiction. The difference is you got to eat.
Yeah.
You can abstain from alcohol. I mean, some people don't, but you got to eat. And we have this toxic environment, so there's food everywhere. I mean, there's Godiva chocolate at the Barnes and Noble checkout. What is it doing there? I remember once I went to Radio Shack and I needed to buy a power strip, and I go around the corner of the aisle and there's M&Ms and this off candy counter at Radio Shack, and I'm like, what, But imagine, and then I say to people, like, imagine if you were addicted to alcohol, and now think about it. Think about every time you see food during the day, it's a small bottle of alcohol like they serve you on an airplane. How would you possibly break that addiction, right? The temptation would be there all the time because, the strongest cue for a craving is sight.
But again, there's something, I guess maybe in my case, maybe it's a general observation, but when I went vegan,
Yeah.
I took all animal products off the table, and there's a lot of animal products that I love, like a pastrami sandwich from like Cat's Deli, which was a thing, like bacon, hot dogs, like
Sure.
all that stuff. I my wife is not vegan. She eats meat, and she has stuff in the house. Even things like I have a bad sweet tooth, so things like chocolate and stuff like that sometimes
Right.
is in the house. I have no desire to touch that. Like I've wrote it off. Like that's poison, and it has like nothing to do with me. So I don't look at it as food.
Right.
And I don't know if, and again, I think that's mental. I don't think that has anything.
Oh no! Listen, I've known you a long time. You are I think I saw this to you the other day. Once you get locked into an idea, you dial in, and you are in, and you are ferocious, and you are like
Is
that.
that bad?
Well, no, I think it's a mixed bag. I think it's got you where you are. That's good. There's been a little suffering, maybe more than you would have been comfortable with. The beating yourself up, the not giving yourself a break. I mean, when we talked about you insisting on you take a little break from this workout because you're overtraining, and you kind of didn't really want to do it. But then when you did take like 7-10 days off or something on the dead hang, you were 40% stronger because you rested. Because you grow, your body grows on the downtime, not when you're exercising. It's like picking a scab off your finger. If you keep picking the scab, it's not going to heal. So it's good and it's bad. If you can use it for good and not evil, then, as I like to say,
That makes sense.
Then it's worthwhile. But we have to come back to that idea that we're fallible, and we have to recover from the adversity. And so we have people in our program who they might have a weekend off the rails, they went to a wedding, whatever, and and it's funny because it always turns out when they email me, because I check their weight each week, they'll say, "Oh my God, I had the weekend from hell. I ate everything." Right, and I look at their weight and I say, "You gained 6 ounces. What are you talking to me about that you went crazy?" And what I say to them and how I interpret it is, you have internalized the things we've been teaching you. So even when you eat what we call ad libitum, anything you want, all you want, you're not eating as much as you used to. And you're also able to get back on track on Monday. And that makes all the difference. That's why we
I
have
see.
92% of the people who lose weight. Because if not, if people behaved the way they did before they came to the program, they would just keep eating, which they did. I mean, that nobody's showing up at our door because they're feeling great. They just want to listen to me talk, right? That's not what's happening. They're uncomfortable. They reach a point where it's just not working for them. I think that sort of happened for you. You described it sort of like a switch that went off. Your brain doesn't work like that, but it built over time until you just got tired of food hangovers and you know
So you have to reach a low before you can
well, I
get
don't think
get back.
everybody does, but I think I believe that in our program, when I would interview people, yes, they had hit a low
Okay.
many times.
I mean,
But
from a
this is not an easy thing to change. When we would have a Friday conference every Friday at our hospital, and this was a big international research center. We'd have people come from all over the globe to speak in our conference. And they would criticize me about things like the food thing and everything. And I'd say, okay, listen, I want everybody in this room this week, maybe 30 people there. I want everybody this week to write down their food and change the way you eat. And then you come back next week and you tell me how easy that was. Because they just think, eat less and exercise more. They have this huge bias. And you know, it's insidious and it's societal bias. And still, people think, even with like the new weight loss medicines, why do you have to take a medicine to lose weight? What people don't understand is that, there is no neurobiology here. I mean, we have the evidence. We do. I don't say that people are addicted to food to make them feel bad, to make them feel like an addict. I say it because I want to empower them so they understand it is not their fault. Because I would say 98% of the people who come to the program think it's their fault. And how are you gonna
I mean, I always assumed it is my fault. I am in
I
control of
know,
what I
but you
eat.
bought the bias. You bought the bias that it is your fault, and it's not.
But whose fault is it then?
Well, why does there have to be any fault? Why can't it just be
I used to
that?
be I mean, when I was a little kid, I was skinny.
Yeah, and so but we call it the scientific name is epigenetics or the genotype phenotype. You had a predisposition to be your body weight,
But
and the
that's a
gene
choice
expressed
at the
itself.
end of the day.
What?
That's a choice. In other words,
No.
so let's say that heart disease runs in my family.
Right.
I might be predisposed to heart disease, but that doesn't mean that I can't do things like run and
Absolutely.
right.
That's right.
So isn't that the same for the food?
Well,
I mean,
yes,
I don't. There's no real like obesity in my family, as far as I know.
but that I've had twins come, and one weighs 3 times as much as the other, and they're living in the same environment, same everything. So genetics is tricky. There's 2 to 700 different what we call polygenic genes for what you weigh. They control everything from your appetite regulation, everything. And if the environment is such that it lends itself to that gene, what we say expressing itself, the gene gets directions from DNA, and the gene has to transcribe it and send it to the cells. So if you have DNA for, blue eyes, well, you're going to end up having blue eyes. That's just how it's going to be. And that's what we call the phenotype, phenotype, how the organism looks. So there's a phenotype for tall people, short people, big people, small people, blue eyes, everything. But if you grow up if you exposed to the temptations and to this toxic what we call obesogenic environment, and you do have that predisposition, I mean, Alex, there isn't a chance that I'll ever get to that size, no matter what, because any day that I overeat, the next day I don't eat. I still feel it. I regulate my appetite, and people don't regulate their appetites, and that is not their fault. Nobody said, hey, I really want to not regulate my appetite.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can give you 100 different neurotransmitters and gut hormones, ghrelin, leptin, neuropeptide Y, PYY, 1,000 reasons. And I can show you scans, brain scans of people who are addicted to different substances of abuse, alcohol, cocaine, food. Their brains look different. And, dopamine is maybe everybody's probably maybe heard of dopamine. It's the pleasure neurotransmitter. Gives you lots of pleasure. Whether, from whatever it is, whether you're playing cards or watching a movie, listening to music, having sex, whatever it is, dopamine's involved in that. So you look at brain scans of people who have substance abuse. What you see is that the receptor in the brain that the dopamine attaches itself to, think of it like a key, and it fits. And when the key fits, it sends a signal to the cells to do whatever it's supposed to do. So dopamine is supposed to make you feel good. It attaches to the receptor in the brain, makes you feel good.
And so something
now,
like
but in addiction, what happens is those receptors don't work. And if we inject a radioactive dye into a human being, and it's designed to stain dopamine receptors, what you see, and it stains red. That's just what it does. If you compare a cocaine addict to somebody who isn't, there are far fewer dopamine receptors in the cocaine addict, which means what? How do they get their pleasure? They have to have more cocaine. That is the essence of addiction. And it's the same for all addictions. If I showed those brain scans to neuroscientists, that scientist would not be able to tell me if the person was addicted to food, alcohol, or cocaine. But it's what we call downregulation of those receptors. And that is the proof that this is an addiction. Sugar is more addictive than cocaine in rodents. This is no joke. We're talking about true. You look at somebody with a high BMI, the body mass index, a ratio of your weight to your height. If you have somebody in the, has obesity, they're going to have dopamine receptors that don't look like mine. They are going to have down regulation. They need more food in their reward pathway to get the fix. And this is not their fault. And it's just not. And I'll never have a problem with obesity because I don't have the genetics for it.
But
and you have to give yourself a break. People have, and that's what we teach. And it's very well received, that message, because suddenly people are empowered. They realize he's right. I'll show them images of their brain lighting up when they look at a fatty food. People, they go, yeah, that's how my brain feels. I said, yeah, I know. And my brain doesn't feel that way. And, people would say to me when I said I'm going to teach them this, they'd say, no, Rich, you're going to label them. They're going to think they're addicts and they're going to feel worse. Complete opposite. Everybody, you know what? I always say in the group, don't listen to anybody, only listen to me, because nobody knows what they're talking about.
So, so you're not the first person to tell me this. I actually learned about this mindfulness, when you eat and stuff, about a year ago.
Okay.
I was working with somebody, her name is Ella Majors. online. She's a sexy fit vegan, and she's kind of like a coach. And mindfulness is a big part of what she does. In other
Yeah.
words, you know, that raisin exercise where you eat
Well,
just a raisin for like
yeah. Yes.
10
Yes.
minutes.
Yeah.
You know, she had me do that. And, you know, that's one of the things that I learned from
Did
her.
it help you?
It did. It did.
Yeah.
Now I am more conscious and sort of present when I eat.
Yep.
Like,
Yes.
so like yesterday, and you know, again, I'm vegan, so I can get away with stuff like this. But I had a vegan McRib sandwich. You know, it's the McDonald's thing, and there's like, you know, you can buy them. It's a pack of 2
Yeah. I think you showed me a
Morningstar,
picture of them.
yeah, ribs and nice, you know, hoagie roll. You get some onion and pickles on there, and you got a McRib. And I mean, I sat there probably half an hour eating this McRib. And honestly, about a year ago, maybe a little more than that, it would have been gone in like 2 minutes. I might have been even standing up when I ate it, and I would have
Right.
been back to
Exactly.
work. And
So
that's a
let me
big
ask you a question.
shift also.
Let me ask you a question. How long do you think it takes when you're eating? How long do you think it takes for your brain to register fullness,
20
satiety?
minutes.
Oh, you know it. You're
Oh
right.
yeah.
You know the answer.
Yeah.
So what do people do? They eat more than they biologically need before their brain gets the signal to shut down.
Yeah.
And that happens. So the mindfulness, you know, we just did a 4-week mindfulness eating workshop, 4 weeks, and we did the raisin exercise. And I said to them the other day, I said, I have never seen, I've probably done that raisin exercise 10,000 times. I never saw a group of people. I mean, everybody, for those who don't know what it is, you take a raisin, you put it in your mouth, and you play with it in your tongue, you feel the texture, you taste it, you play with it in your mouth for a while, and you get mindful about what's going on with this raisin. Well, people are good at that, but they came back the following week and they all reported that they were more mindful with their eating. And I've never seen that. I don't know if it was the way we presented it. I don't know what happened. But every one of them came back and said, I ate slower and I was more mindful. And, one of the first things we do when people come to the program is we ask them to sit at their dinner table, not at their sofa, to eat, not in bed, sit at their dinner table without their device, without anything, and sit and eat. And the pushback we get on this is incredible sometimes.
Multitasking. We're used to very much multitasking.
Well, yes, it's true. And so, it's very Pavlovian in the sense that, if you sit at your sofa and you eat and watch television, then what do you think is going to happen every time you look at the TV or at the sofa?
So I do intermittent fasting, and I'm actually done eating by like 4:30 usually. And in the evening when I watch TV with my wife, that was a thing. Like we would have, snacks of some sorts, and all of a sudden I'm like, I can't have any more snacks. And it took me a long time to get over that.
Right. Well, because it becomes, listen, here's how I describe it. You have a nice clean white sheet of paper, right? Brand new. And you draw a heavy pencil line on it. And then you erase it. There's a remnant. You're going to see a remnant. Well, you can draw a new line, and that's what happens in your brain. Because your brain is what we say is plastic. It's malleable. You can lay down new pathways in your brain. You have to understand your brain is like an electrical chemical machine, and it's sending signals all over the place, right? And every signal is designed to do something. So we get people mindful. We slow them down. We have them sit calmly. We ask them to eat with their non-dominant hand so that they have a little more difficulty eating. We ask them to eat with chopsticks. We ask them to put food on a smaller plate. We have a whole bunch of techniques that we use that help them with this. And, they kick back a little bit at first. Then okay, it's helping me now. And
Nice.
I'm eating slower. And they also notice, and they're aware, like, oh my gosh, I'm eating so much sugar, right? they stop doing that, and suddenly the food tastes better. Like suddenly the vegetables taste sweeter. And it's because they're more mindful now. And it happens all the time, Alex. And we're good at
It
it.
is very interesting, and it's also very interesting how many people don't do this. You know, like
Most people don't. Most people
there's
don't.
you know, I am in Vegas, right? So we have the magician Penn and Teller,
Yeah.
and Penn,
Yeah.
he's huge. He's like 6'3" or something,
Right.
and he was always huge. He was saying that he was, you know, his blood pressure was 220 or some crazy number, and so he lost 100 pounds. He made it magically disappeared, and basically for 2 weeks he ate nothing but potatoes.
Well,
Nothing added, nothing taken away. So you just a boiled potato, no salt, no, you know, ketchup, no nothing,
uh,
just potato, skin and all.
okay.
And after the 2 weeks, when he says when he ate like an ear of corn, it was the sweetest thing that he ever ate.
Exactly. This happens
And
all
all
the
of a
time.
sudden, you know, he realized, oh my God, like I used to drench this in butter and do all this and all, and it needs none of that. It's
Yep.
just perfect the way it is on its own.
You know, we actually have two sets of sweet receptors in our body. We have a sweet receptor in our palate, in the tongue, but then we have one lower down in our GI. So it's really in our throat. So we get a double hit of sweetness that we're not even aware of. And that's why it's so seductive. And that's why people have very strong cravings for sweets. And it's more addictive than cocaine. And when we, you know, we could have people coming in drinking 5 or 6 liters of regular soda a day. I mean, a bottle of Coke, 1 liter, a bottle of Coke is 50% sugar. You know, so what else
Yeah.
is going to happen? And furthermore, when you do that, your body makes insulin, because insulin is the key that unlocks the cells so that the sugar can go into the muscle to burn it for fuel, just like an automobile burns gasoline. So insulin is the key. Well, when you start doing that kind of thing, insulin is secreted within 7 seconds. And you first get that spike, and then it crashes. And it's not just that that's bad. It's that when you have more insulin floating around in your system, it makes you hungry.
Resistant.
It goes, well, yeah, because you have resistance to the insulin, because it's just the receptor is oversaturated. So insulin, if you took a basal insulin level, you would see that it's elevated above the norm. And insulin, it makes you hungry, and it stores fat. You have to think of your fat cells like balloons, and a balloon can only get so large, and that's it. And fat cells are like that too. So the fancy name for a fat cell is a adipocyte. So the fat cell fills with fat, and typically it's triglyceride. So people may have heard of that. That's what you go and you get your blood test. It's triglycerides, and that's about 97% of the fat that we eat. So you eat that triglyceride, and it goes either to your liver, to your heart, to your muscles if you're moving, or to the fat cell, to the adipocyte. And the fat cell gets large, and then it can only get so large, and then it stimulates an immature cell next to it to grow. So it's not that you're gaining more fat cells, they're just getting larger. So the problem is that the triglyceride is a very large molecule, and it has to be broken down before it can leave the fat cell. And so there's a biochemical pathway called lipolysis. And when you exercise, for instance, lipolysis rises and it breaks down the triglyceride so that the fat can leave. And that's how you lose weight. You shrink the size of the fat cell. So now you've got this triglyceride floating around in the blood. Where would you like it to go? To the muscle, because the muscle is going to burn it for energy, just like your automobile burns gasoline. Otherwise, it's going to end up clogging your arteries in your heart or your liver. Or your liver's over here, not here.
All right. So we've been already chatting for an hour. Feels like 20 minutes, but it's been an hour. So I do have a bunch of more questions, and then I'm also, if anybody out there is watching, I have no way of telling who is or who isn't. Software is new, so I can't really tell. You can post your questions in the chat, and we'll answer it either on the call or in comments under the video. But I do have some other stuff that I wanted to touch on or ask you about. So first of all, from a mental health perspective, sleep, how important is it? I mean, my personal feeling is you need to sleep. You can exercise all you want, you can eat right, but without the sleep, you're not doing much.
Correct. So sleep's been very well studied. We were discussing this before we went on live. Sleep has been very, very well studied, and lack of sleep is very bad for a human being in a number of ways. Less than 7 hours for a number of reasons. One, you have a region in your brain, the inhibitory region, we call it the go, no-go region. And when you're tired, you lose your inhibition. You become more impulsive because you cognitively are exhausted, right? So you're not going to make the same decisions that you would make consistent with what you want to do in losing weight. Then, if you're sleeping fewer hours than 7, there's a hormone called ghrelin, Grelin. And when your stomach shrinks and gets smaller, ghrelin travels to your brain and tells you you're hungry. It attaches to its own receptor, like dopamine has a receptor, ghrelin has a receptor. And that ghrelin is elevated when people sleep less or more. If you're sleeping 10 hours, it's also elevated. And that drives you to eat more. And in fact, it even makes the food taste better because it's connected, because what we call gustatory regions in your tongue makes the food taste better. The ghrelin does. And the leptin, which is the opposite, is supposed to make you full. So you eat, and then the leptin gets he gets the signal that you've eaten enough, and leptin goes to your brain and says, stop eating. Well, that doesn't happen when you get not enough sleep. So it's not just a sort of you're tired and you've lost impulse control or self-regulation. You've also sabotaged the hormones that are responsible for your appetite regulation. And these are very difficult to resist. I mean, you can take a rat in the lab and knock out, just get rid of their ghrelin receptor, which is telling them to eat. And if you put their favorite food, the rat, in front of them, fat is their favorite food. If you put fat in front of them and you knock out their ghrelin receptor, they will not eat it. They will look at it and they will not eat it. They don't have the cognitions we have, so they don't know what's going on, but they'll starve to death before they eat it. That's how powerful these hormones are. So it's no different than a human. It's no different. So you have this lack of sleep is really problematic for the impulse control. You become what we call disinhibited. It's like when you're intoxicated. So there's inhibition where you inhibit, and then there's the opposite, disinhibition. And we can measure that. I've done lots of research on disinhibition.
So what's a good amount of sleep per night? Are we talking about 7 hours?
7. 7 is the number. That's what it seems to be. Now, there's going to be some minor variation.
Yes, 7 seems good. That's roughly what I get, and I'm pretty happy with that.
The research, if you did a huge analysis of 10,000 studies on sleep and you average it all out, 7 hours would be the number you would come up with. So, we talk with people in our program about this. Like, what time are you going to sleep? 2:30 in the morning. Well, what are you doing till 2:30? Yeah. So, yeah. Okay, so but it's really hard. It's not easy to start going to sleep at 11 when you're used to going to sleep at 2:30, right? So we work it, and then eventually, and the sleep experts will say, if you wake up, you get out of bed. If you wake
Yes.
up at 6 in the morning, get out of bed. Don't lie there. Get out of bed, and then you will be more tired the next evening, and you'll go to sleep earlier. And
Yes.
that's one of the key strategies that they do teach. And we talk with people about it, and they do it. And when they restore their sleep, they do feel better, and they do lose weight. And I've done that analysis, and I have looked at it. I've done lots of surveys, administered millions of them. Like, okay, so how many hours of sleep are you getting? And then I do a statistical test to determine the association between how many hours of sleep and how much does somebody weigh. And it's always the same. The result's always the same. And when they repair the sleep, the association changes. They
Okay.
lose weight. So sleep's very important.
All right. How about exercise? So first, I run and I strength train. I think in both are important. I don't know if one is more important than the other. I think as you get older, the strength training might be more important, but I feel like you need the cardio as well. And I like running. So, but I guarantee you there's people that like one or the other. And I've also heard that, well, don't run because then that prevents you from gaining muscle, and you should just do strength training. And
Yeah,
there are gym rats that won't touch the treadmill.
right.
They'll
Yeah.
and I don't get that.
Well, we call, like running, biking, treadmill,
Cardio.
elliptical machine, all aerobic exercise. So aerobic exercise is what we call catabolic, breaks muscle tissue down. So all bodybuilders know that. They may go on the bike for 6 or 7 minutes just to warm up, but they're not going to run a marathon because they know it's going to break down their muscle tissue. The average person doesn't really need to worry about this too much. And there's a mountain of evidence that both are important. So when people come to me and they say, I'm going to the gym for an hour and I go on the treadmill for an hour, I say, no, stop. I want you to go on the treadmill for 30 minutes and do 30 minutes of resistance exercise. Because there is not one person on this planet who, if they are not doing strength training of some type, they are not getting stronger as they get older. And our protein levels drop. Protein is intrinsic to muscle. Intrinsic. It's the protein filaments in your muscle fibers that go like this, cross bridging it's called, and they're all made of protein. That's why protein's so important. In fact, you can give leucine, amino acid, to somebody with doing nothing else and they'll build muscle. That's how potent this effect is. So protein is dropping, strength is dropping, the motor discharge.
And that's when you get into trouble. Like I watched my dad. He walked into a hospital and he was in bed for 10 days and he got wheeled out in a wheelchair on the way out because he could no longer walk.
So the classic experiment on this was done by a woman named Maria Fiatarone. 20 years already, probably. She went to a nursing home in Boston. The average age was 89. They had 98-year-old people. And what she did, she had 100 people, men and women. And all she had them do was the leg extension. You sit in the chair and you lift your leg up. 12 weeks. And now these were really inactive people and elderly. After 36 workouts, 12 weeks, 3 times a week, they got 110% stronger. And it's not a function, and their thighs did get a little bigger, but it's not that. It's a function of the brain sending signals to the muscle to fire. And what was happening in the nursing home was people were sitting around and you had younger aides there. Oh, let me get it for you. It's the worst thing you could do. Because then they were just sitting more and more and more and more. And so Maria did that study and it rocked the world. Because
look at the blue zones. They have the centenarians, and it's because they're active. They're constantly like gardening or doing something.
Your original question, which is more important? As you get older, I would say it's 51-49. You got to do the resistance, but you still need to do the aerobic, because there's a mountain of evidence that that's also very helpful. It's good for bone health. It's good for the heart. It's good for the brain. You get more mitochondria in the brain as a result of aerobic activity. Not so. This is, it decreases inflammation more, so you're going to have less dementia. Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, but it's got to be something that you're moving your body through space. So both are important. But I guess if I was forced, if I had a gun to my head and say one or the other, Rich, that's it, then I would say resistance exercise. But again, because you got a lot at stake, because if you don't do that, then the muscles are not going to regenerate. Cells in the body are dying all the time, even at a young age. And we call that cell apoptosis. The cell death generates more cells to grow. As you get older, they don't regenerate as quickly. Exercise changes all of it, reverses it.
Yeah, I mean,
it's anti-aging. You couldn't take enough medication to do all the things that exercise does for you. So
it's important.
It's very, very important.
And I mean, I feel sluggish and out of place if for example, I don't run for a week or something like that. I can't do it. There hasn't been really, I would say, a 2 or 3 week stretch where I didn't run.
Yeah.
I have to. And that's been the case since 2010, since August of 2010.
The fifth most expensive medical expense in this country is falling down.
Yeah.
Only cancer, blood pressure, stroke, cardiovascular disease is more expensive. Diabetes. And people are falling because they're not as strong.
No muscle.
Less muscle. They have less what we call proprioception, which is knowing where your body is in space. Like if I close my eyes and try to touch my nose, I can, because my brain knows where my finger is in space, wherever it is.
Mm-hmm.
When you're intoxicated, before they
I see. That's why they do that test.
To try to touch your nose. You're intoxicated, can't. So essentially, aging without any resistance or strength training is sort of like that. You're going to lose proprioception. You're not going to know where your feet are when they land. They're going to land improperly, and your bones are going to get less dense. I mean, you're going to get osteoporosis, because even riding on a bicycle, on a stationary bicycle, builds bone muscle in the spine, bones in the spine. I mean, on a cellular level, you can't beat exercise. You just can't. So they're both important. And when you lose weight, you can lose up to 35% of your weight from muscle.
Sure.
And that's really problematic, because number one, it prevents the muscles from burning fuel, because they're drying up. So there's less, it's like your automobile engine not working as well any longer, because you have less muscle fiber working. Then you have less strength. You have lower self-esteem, and then you're dependent on other people for everything, right? I mean, the deepest core value I have is self-sufficiency. I do not want anybody pushing me around in a wheelchair when I get old.
I agree. I want to be around for another 50 years. And
that's right. And I do not want I don't want to be dependent on anybody. That is my core value. So that's why I work out, because I don't want to have to, I live in an apartment building in New York City. I don't want to have to call the super to come up and change a light bulb. I don't want to do that. I don't want to live like that.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Resistance training changes that. And then if you can go out for that walk, the new guidelines, the 2018 guidelines, big scientific paper, this big, right? Big, lots of science. You know what they concluded? Move more and sit less. That's it. That's the scientific statement from the American Heart Association and the American College of Sports Medicine. Move more, sit less.
Makes sense.
For 5 hours, every 20 minutes, they had people walk for 2 minutes on a treadmill. They had 3 groups. One group, they sat for 5 hours. The other group, they walked moderately every 20 minutes for 5 hours, and the other group walked quickly. Well, they looked at their genes and the muscles. One day, one session, 5 hours, 3 times an hour, 2 minutes, and they had greater gene expression. More muscle was being built. So move more and sit less. So
Okay.
this intentional change is really important. Like if you have Roomba, you should throw it out and vacuum your apartment or home yourself. If you have RoboMow, you should get rid of that and you should be pushing the lawnmower. Like we have engineered
Yeah.
inactivity into our lives. I have a slide of a suitcase that has a motor in it, and the handle is the
Yes.
steering wheel. And you sit on the suitcase and steer. It goes up
It's
to
a
40 miles
Honda.
per hour in
I'm
the
familiar
airport.
with it.
And we think this is fantastic. We think we're just so pleased that we don't have to move, right? We have engineered inactivity in. And I call that the pre-5 minutes in the program. I
Yeah.
say, what are you thinking? You know, like you're waiting for the bus, let's say, if you live in the city. You're waiting I've watched it and I've timed it. 19 minutes you're waiting. You're going to take the bus 2 blocks. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't make, I mean, I have the pictures to prove it. And so we have to make intentional changes too. That also counts. So that's where the move more, sit less, incorporate it into your day. I'm not saying you got to go out and become a marathon runner. I'm saying start where you're at, look at your world, say, where can I make one little change just to get the thing going? Like, you know, the greatest walking program of all time, Alex, you know what it is? 5 minutes out, 5 minutes back. Done. That's it. 5 minutes out, look at your watch, turn around, go home. That's it. And then you could do a wall press. You know, you could lean against the wall and push. Now you've done your aerobic cardio work, 10 minutes, and you've done a little bit of strength. And that's it. I am good with that. And when I do the exercise counseling in those sessions, I teach them all the things we've been talking about. And then I have them write it down at the end of the session. And they all have to report it out loud for the first week that I do it. And if they say to me, I'm going to do 5 minutes out, 5 minutes back twice next week, and I'm going to do some wall presses when I come home, and I say to them, what is the probability that you're going to come in next week and say you did that? And if they say 100%, I'm good to go. Because it doesn't matter to me. We're making a behavior change. We're working to help people change their behavior. And they're not going to lose a lot of weight anyway with the exercise. So what's the difference? It's building this behavior change because, you know, when you do lose weight and you get to the weight where you want to be, one of the best predictors of preventing regain is exercise. So if you build it up slowly over time, you know, if we have a lot of tech people listening tonight, I don't know. I've got the stereotypical bias that, programmers are sitting all night and,
We do.
eating pizza, crazy
Yes.
things, and they're just sitting and coding all day and they're not getting up from their desk and, all that kind of thing. So what I'm suggesting, get up once an hour for 2 minutes. The research shows that's going to help you. It's going to clear your head. And then you can move from there.
That used to be my smoking break. I would get up, have to go outside, down to the garage, and back.
I'm going to tell you something. There's a really lovely study that was done. They looked at people who had high blood pressure, who smoked, had diabetes, and there was one other. I'm trying to remember what it was. But they had all these risk factors for heart disease or diabetes. If they exercised, even if they smoked, they were healthier than somebody who smoked and was sedentary. Even if they smoked. But it doesn't take a lot. You can build it into your day.
Baby steps.
The guidelines from 1998 were accumulate 30 minutes over time. So you could do 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 10 minutes there. And you can build up to that. And now it's just move more and sit less, because more research has been done to prove that that also helps. So, we are just nailed to our seats. I mean, I don't know where, in New York City, you could stay in your apartment for months and get everything you need unless you had to go out to see a doctor. Everything is delivered. You go on your computer, on your phone, you order food, it's delivered.
Yeah.
I went to visit my sister in the suburbs. I couldn't believe it. They called her. We ordered from a restaurant. They called and said, okay, it's ready. Parking space 12. I said, what does that mean? She said, we're going to go there. We're going to sit in the car and they're going to bring the food out to us. And I'm like, so in other words, we will burn 0 calories. Hunter-gatherer.
That's very common. Yeah. I mean, my stuff gets delivered. I mean, I haven't ordered stuff in a while, but it comes right to the door. I don't have to go anywhere.
We have engineered inactivity into our lives. And it's one of the greatest health risks of our time.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that I want to do on this channel. I'm going to do a Couch to 5K program.
I think it's great. We use the Couch to 5K all the time,
running and all that stuff. So it'll all be here. I got one more question for you because we're going into 90 minutes.
Let me just say one thing about the running real quickly, because if people are, if they have obesity or have overweight, it's very common for the question to come up, when can I start running? How much weight do I have to lose before I can start running? Because you do hit the ground with 3 to 5 times your body weight. Nobody knows the answer to that. We have no idea. So it's going to have to kind of be a kind of feel it out kind of thing. But keep in mind that for every pound you lose, it's 4 pounds less stress on your joints.
So, I mean, I'll put it to you this way. I mean, I'm not much of an experiment, but back in November when I was 252, I was running.
Yeah.
But my pace suffered. My pace was, 13, 12,
but your
13
knees
minutes.
held up. That's
my
why
knees
I
held
say
up.
We have no idea. I don't know how to counsel anybody on that. I say you can walk, what I'll often do, I'll say, okay, why don't you walk and jog a little, walk, jog, do a little.
I like that. The run walk is
like that. And then wait till 2 days later to see how your knees feel. Because you're not going to damage your knees. It's not like your knees are going to fall off if you go out for a week or so and do that. And then report back to me and let's see where we're at. And then I can give them exercises to do to strengthen their legs so that it takes stress off their knee. When people run for the first time in 40 years, it's like their whole life, they just feel great. Like they didn't know they could move like that.
Well, so since you had me research, the wins, right? I looked up running, like what is, what percentage of the world runs a half marathon?
Yeah.
It's less than 1.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's ridiculous. I belong to a group of, I'm a 1% group.
Yes, you do. I tell you this all the time. You're in the 1%. You're just too, I'm never going to fix your perfectionism, but you are way too hard on yourself. You do more than 99% of the people. I said to you the other night, and you said no. I said to you, you're exercising just about as much as these people in the Game Changers. Now they're professional athletes.
Spend all day.
They're professional athletes and they get paid. So, but you are putting in as much psychic energy as they are, and you are, you're a phenomenon.
So, I mean, since you went there with the diets and everything, I mean, the thing with the Game Changers, right, is for elite athletes, they say that, you can, on a vegan diet, maybe gain, a 0.001% better because you recover quicker, you're less sore, all those different things play into effect. And so, like that sprinter from Australia, right? She won by less than a second.
Right. At the elite level, every millisecond counts.
But true. From a personal experience, I can tell you that energy level is real. Like when I
believe it.
When I went vegan in 2016, I mean, I remember I went running for the first time twice in one day because I didn't know what to do with myself.
Yeah,
Like I
you have
had
so
this
much energy.
energy and I
Yeah,
couldn't, like, well, what the hell do I do with me? So I ran like 3 miles in the morning and 3 miles in
yeah,
the afternoon.
yeah,
And I'm like, hey, I can keep going.
yeah.
And, just like what, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I ran a half marathon, which is 13 miles in the morning. I came home, I walked the dogs, which was another mile. Then I drove back because they had an afternoon race and I ran a 5K. And in that 5K, I came in first in my age
So,
group.
Mr. Tushinsky,
So
let me ask you a question. How many people do you think did that?
I
Ever?
don't know.
Not many. No one.
But I mean, I wasn't sore or tired. I was
No, well, look,
surprised that I wasn't, in
you know,
fact, because I thought
you're
the 5K would be a
your
slog.
diet is filled with anti-inflammatories, antioxidants. You're getting all your complete proteins. I know what you eat, and you're getting all the carbohydrate you need. I mean, your macronutrient breakdown is like perfect.
So you hit on something. I mean, there's really, so you have, obviously like the standard American diet. You
Yeah,
have the vegan diet, then there's the keto diet, and then there's now the carnivore diet. So carnivore is like pure meat, nothing else. Like
right.
you have your drink a glass of eggs with your steak.
Yeah, yeah.
What's your take on these? You're not vegan. You're pretty impartial on all these. If you had a choice of diets today, or what would be the best one for, I would say, for longevity, for energy, for anti-cancer, for
Well,
weight loss,
right. Yeah.
if you had to pick
So,
one?
I mean, the vegan research is very persuasive. Plant-based diets are very persuasive. I don't know a big difference between the vegetarian, vegan. I don't know if there's ever been a head-to-head study to really look at all the biomarkers to see performance-wise or anything like that. I mean, there is some evidence that there are antioxidants in some meat. There is, but
Uh,
not nearly what you're doing. I mean,
yeah,
not
I mean, I
edamame,
think
not tofu, not you know walnuts and all the all the polyphenols you're eating. I mean, you're like you know
blueberries every day. Yeah.
all that. I mean, blueberries are like the perfect food. Truthfully, high in fiber, high in vitamin. I mean,
But anybody could eat that. So I mean, I think maybe it's more of like the blue zones, right? They do a little bit of meat here and there, but it's mostly vegetarian
yeah.
or
I mean,
vegan.
I don't eat red meat. I never do. And so I would say my diet's sort of in the middle of the road a little bit. Yeah. I mean,
But
I
you would
definitely
stay
have my
away
vegetables. What's that?
from like you would stay away from like these carnivore or keto.
Oh, I would never. I mean, if I always tell people this. I said, if if you wanted me to train somebody who you were competing against, this is exactly what I would do. I would decrease their carbohydrates to like 10% of their intake and have them eat like whopping doses of protein, which they won't necessarily use, and fat. That's what I would have them do, because the carbohydrate is where the energy is coming from.
Yes.
The thing in the game changers, the one thing that I didn't take exception to it, but they seem to place a lot of emphasis. They kept saying protein's going to give you the energy, but that's not really the case.
Yeah,
That's
carbs gives
not
you the energy.
what.
Carbs.
That's right. And when you run out of carbohydrate, then you break protein down, the amino acids in the protein, so that you can make more carbohydrate. I don't know if the term bonking is used anymore, but hitting the wall at the
Yes.
marathon is there's no coincidence that it almost always happens at around 20 miles for everybody, because you have 12 to 1500 calories stored as carbohydrate in your body. That's it. That's it. And if you have not been having carbohydrate in your diet, you're going to be out of sugar. And your brain, all it basically does is burn glucose, sugar. So you're that's how I would train somebody if I wanted to beat them. So that is you know
It
it, we went through this years ago
It's
where we put
it's
everybody on low carb, you know,
yeah.
high like Atkins, and it was a nightmare, and people couldn't sustain it. And then
No,
we
it's
went the
not
other route.
sustainable. Yeah.
Then we went the other route, high carbs, no anything. And then and then what happened was when people couldn't sustain it because they were eating too much carbohydrate and no fat, when they started eating fat again because they couldn't sustain it, their gallbladders, they all had to have gallbladder removal because your gallbladder secretes a lipase that metabolizes the fat. Well, they were, the ADA and everybody was telling no fat, low fat, low fat, low fat. So your gallbladder wasn't working because it didn't have to do anything, right? And then suddenly you start eating all this fat. Well, the gallbladder removal is called cholecystectomy. It was the number one surgery in the country in the 1970s or early 80s because suddenly everybody was eating fat again because at first they were told not to. And then, so wham, their gallbladders they're getting gallstones and that was the end of that. So
Yeah.
we went back to a more moderate kind of thing. So vegans are, they're healthy. It's a small percent of the population, but it's what's interesting to me about vegans is it's not just about health. It's also the animal
Ethics. Oh yeah.
thing. And I will confess, you know how I love animals. I do, and I have very mixed feelings about my own diet because of that. And I don't know how to reconcile it with myself, to be honest. I
Yeah,
really don't.
most people don't. Yeah.
I don't. I am aware of it, and I don't. I'm in conflict, frankly. I am in conflict. I don't like the fact. I mean, you know how I feel about animals. You know
Yes.
that. So,
Well, worth a shot. Try it.
well, I have in recent times moved a little more toward. I'm definitely having more vegetables than I did in the past. I've always eaten vegetables. I love fruit, but you can have too much fruit. The fructose is
Sure.
not so great for you after a while. But asparagus is my favorite, and asparagus is great for you.
Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah, it's great. I put it on my grill and grill it, and it's
You have a
beautiful.
grill in a New York City apartment?
What's that?
You have a grill in a New York
It's
City
not a
apartment?
George Foreman one. It's I think
Okay. It's in your kitchen.
or something. And
Okay.
all you do, you just spray a little olive oil on it, put the asparagus in there, close the thing. 3 minutes later, you've got warm asparagus. Tastes great. I
Yeah.
love eating this, and it's fun to eat asparagus because it tastes every bite. There's a theory, not even a theory, it's true. The first bite always tastes the best, most of the time, whatever you're eating. I don't find that with asparagus. I find it every piece of it. I like eating the end of it where it's got the kind of leafy kind of part of it, and then the stalk part. So yeah. So
I will say I did a half marathon in 2014 while on a keto diet, and it was, to this day, it remains my worst race ever. It was
there is no question that this is the worst kind of diet for performance.
yeah, it was awful.
No, I mean you have no
energy. No energy. I had cramps. It was
and
bad.
it's even hard to burn fat when you don't have any glucose on board. Because if you understand the Krebs cycle and the whole thing, you need glucose to move the system through. And you deplete it. And that's why at 20 miles, everybody hits the wall if you have been carbohydrate deprived.
I think I hit it at like 3 or something.
Well, it could be possible. Yeah.
All right.
Oh, look what you brought up.
Yeah. We got to wrap this up. It's been 90
Well,
minutes.
why
don't you talk about this a little bit?
Anybody who wants to talk to me, there's my email. I put a QR code on there too, so you don't even have to write it down.
I'm gonna hide us so we get.
And
Yeah.
I'd be happy to speak with you. I'm not going to twist your arm, but if you're considering, you want to get started, we have our two major programs that you would be eligible for as a beginner would be our 26-week lifestyle program, lifestyle change. And it's 26 weeks. We have I myself, dietitian, and a psychologist, clinical psychologist running it. That's starting in June, on June 2nd. That's on Monday night at 6 p.m. Eastern. And it's $50 per week. And you stay with the same people for 26 weeks. So that would be available to people who just want a lifestyle change thing. Then we do have, I did start a weight loss medication support group because there are people using it and their lives are changing. And I have no skin in the game, whether they want to or not. It's completely up to them. But if they do want it, I feel an obligation to educate them and teach them. And I'm helping them a lot because they're going online to telehealth. They're not getting the proper workup. They come to us for 75 minutes every week with 15 to 16 other people. And they're learning how to deal with these medications. And it is changing their life. So I am very enthusiastic about it, but I don't push it. So anybody who's interested in any of this, you just email me and I'll set up a Zoom meeting with you, or you can go on our website and there's a thing where you can click and you get a 10-minute session with me, but we can talk for longer than that. And then I am going to offer this discount. Frankly, I hope this takes off because as we were discussing, Alex and I, wouldn't it be fantastic if we had 15 to 20 tech people in the Zoom room for a weight loss program? That would be amazing. I would write that up. We would get that published. It'd be like
oh, that would be interesting.
Oh, it would be it would be fantastic. June 2nd, that's when we do it. And giving you the discount, I would love 20 techies. Plus, I could also yell at the programmers who make it so difficult that I can't use the stupid technology. So it'd give me a chance to get back at them also. So there'd be a little bit of that. But wouldn't it be great to have everybody in the room who's going through the same thing, like having the same problems and the same impediments? Because impediments are where it's at in terms of not doing a behavior. So what are your impediments, techies? What are they? I'm going to guarantee that they're probably very similar across the board.
Yeah.
And we know how to do this. I've been doing it for 44 years. If you come to the June 2nd one on Monday, between the three of us, we've got like close to 100 years of experience. I mean, you will not find this anywhere else because it's a closed group. You're with the same people. It's medically based. All of us, we all come from a medical background. We're completely committed to it. We all have advanced degrees. This is not a fly-by-night kind of operation. I mean, I come from a hospital background. I mean, it's not my fault they closed the program. But then, I started my own, and frankly, it's better than working in the hospital. I mean, hospitals
I
are not
think
like
so.
the best
I
place
think you're
in the world
doing
to work. It's like kind of.
I remember the hospital program. We had some restrictions.
Yeah, there were, and now my name is on this door, and I take full responsibility, and people are loving it. So and I'm telling you, I will not twist your arm if you email me. I promise I will not. I will talk with you. I'll help you decide what you think would be the best thing for you to do, because that's what I do, and I'm good at it.
Yeah, and I know I've taken advantage of that for a very long time.
I will get inside someone's head and I will understand where they're at, and I will make a recommendation. I'm going to have people come in no matter what. I want to help people. That's what I'm here for. 44 years, I still get high doing it. This is the greatest thrill for me, to run a group and help people transform themselves. Nothing gives me more pleasure. Truthfully, I feel better, even if I'm depressed. If I go into a group and I run it, I feel better after.
Well, I mean, I remember technically you can retire and do nothing, and you chose to do this instead.
I was sitting. I would go to the gym and I would sit. There's a place called Zabar's for anybody who doesn't know the city, and it's a famous place. And I would sit there and have lunch in the middle of the day for like 8 weeks. I said, "What am I doing with my life? This is the worst." Plus, I'm throwing away 44 years of experience when I could be. So anyway, I did. I made a phone call to my accountant. I said, "How do I start a business?"
And you have to stay busy. That's the other part of
do.
longevity and all of that. It's the exercise, the diet, the sleep, all that comes together, and you have to have a purpose.
I've done a lot of research. I've done a lot of clinical work. I you pointed out, I made a presentation for this for tonight. It had like 200.
190 slides.
That's nothing. I have a slide presentation that's 2,400 slides because I just keep reading the literature and keep putting that information into the PowerPoints, because in the groups it's discussion and it's teaching. It's group psychoeducation technically. So it's not group therapy, but it's therapy-ish. People cry sometimes, they get upset because we're talking about the real stuff. This is, we're not nonsense, right? But we also have a good time and we're teaching too. I mean, we use
Yeah, I think
handouts.
that teaching aspect is huge.
It's huge. I mean, we're giving handouts, we're giving homework, we use PowerPoints, we do both. And it's not didactic. It's not like you're just sitting there going to school. It's very engaging. We engage everybody. We get people talking, we call on you. You don't have to say anything you don't want to say, but it's engaging. And I thought, Alex, when we first went on Zoom, I was so concerned that the weight loss was going to suffer. I swear. I thought, oh, it didn't change. It changed 0.1%. That was it. We worked so hard at helping people get through COVID and all the uncertainty on Zoom that we did a great job, because the average American who gained weight gained 26 pounds during COVID. Our people kept losing weight. We still 92% of our people lost weight.
Yeah, I gained weight during COVID.
Yeah, well, a lot of people did, and the average was 26 pounds.
Yeah,
unbelievable, right? But not in our program. We worked hard at it. I mean, I remember we made like 11 different handouts on how to deal with the uncertainty of a pandemic, and I don't know, we have a good time. It's fun, and you can do it from home. You don't have to go anywhere. It's like you dial in, and here we are. And I follow your weight. You gotta enter your weight each week, and I email you every week. I don't know a program where you get to speak to the director of the program every week if you want to. I don't know any program like that, and not with 44 years of experience. I just don't know where that happens. And most programs, they come and go and things, or you go and you see a doctor and then you go see the dietitian, and that's the program. No, we have groups, and you need groups. Groups the best treatment for losing weight, because you get camaraderie, you get community, you get support from each other, and you're accountable, and that's what works. We're all really smart. We really know what we're doing, but that group is the most powerful part of our program. I will be the first to admit it, right? And and people are always quick to say, "Oh, Rich, thanks, you just saved our life." I say, well, two things. Number one, the group was very effective, and number two, you showed up with an open heart and an open mind, and we worked together. I may be brilliant and everything else, but I'm not a magician. You have to be here with an open heart and open mind to receive what we're offering. And when that happens, the magic, then that's where transformation comes in. And that's when people really transform themselves. And that's very exciting to watch.
And your numbers speak for themselves.
The numbers really do. Numbers don't lie. I spend a lot of time on analyses. I sit in spreadsheets. I'm like one of you techies. Sit there and look at spreadsheets all day. It's like, I look at those weights all day, and I still, if you ask me what is Joe Smith in a program weigh, I wouldn't be able to tell you. I look at his weight every single week. It just doesn't matter to me. It's just a number. It's meaningless in that way. It's good for my analysis. It's good for my research, but that's all I use it for. I want his story. I want to know how to help him, and knowing his weight is not going to help me. It's just not. It's secondary. It's just not the important part. The important part, and people will tell you if you talk to them, they'll say, yeah, he's right. That's what he did. Yeah. And I've had comments like, it's the first time in my life I ever felt like I wasn't overweight talking to Rich. We are completely non-judgmental in there. Anything goes. We don't judge you. We don't shame you. We understand that this is not your fault. We understand that this is neurobiology. It's addiction. You did not choose this. You did not. Nobody did. Nobody who came to our program chose to, they didn't. It's just, so that's the approach we take, and no restriction, because that doesn't work. and you work whatever works until it doesn't work, and then we'll give you something else to do, and then you can always go back to the thing that was working again. And that's the practical approach. I mean, even though we've sort of had our say about keto, but if somebody came to me and they said, look, keto was the most effective for me, I said, okay, so tell me what happened. So they were on keto for 3 months and they lost a bunch of weight. And then I said, and then what happened? Well, I couldn't sustain it. I said, okay, so here's the thing. Do keto because it worked. But at 2.5 months, I want you to talk to me. And we're going to talk about what to do next so that you don't regain your weight. Because cycling doesn't affect your metabolism. People think it does. It doesn't. But it affects your head. Up and down, up and down. I mean, who wants to fail all the time, right? And I believe the programs fail people. I don't believe people fail the programs. I think the approach has not been healthy. It just has not. And our data show it. We have a very low attrition. We don't lose a lot of people. If we had a group of 20, 2 or 3 people leave after 52 weeks or 20, it's a very low attrition. 92% of the people lose weight. And you know what? The 8% of the people who don't lose, you know what they say? They're even happier sometimes than the people who lost 5 or 10% of their body weight. You know why? Because they were gaining weight a lot when they came to us, and we stopped it. And they feel much better about themselves. And it's not uncommon to hear somebody say, Rich, all the things we're learning in these groups, it applies to everything in my life. Like being more assertive, not procrastinating, learning how to pull myself back together out of adversity. We teach life skills. We teach you how to say no. I mean, how many times have you been somewhere where your Aunt Joanne said, oh, I made this cookie for you. Have one more, have one more, have one more. And well, we know what to do about that. And we help people say no. And people get control because at the core of it, it's whether you feel like you got control or not. And that's what we do. So
nice.
I would love to have a tech group start in June. That would be
all right. We'll see if we can make that happen.
That would be we once did a group with Salvation Army people. I would love to have a group with all techies. That would really be amazing. Plus, I'd really have to make sure I know how to use Zoom because.
Yeah.
Anyway, this has been great.
It has been great, and we've been here for almost 2 hours. So I'm going to let you go. Thank you for your time, and this was great. I'll definitely we should get back together again and dive into some of the details on some of this stuff. Plus,
I'm happy to show some slides. I can show some of the.
You have 290 of them. We only saw 2 today, so you've got we've got some more streams.
I say this and then I'll go. I say to people, the number one fear in the country is speaking in public. I have a fear of not speaking in public.
And you have a lot to say.
And I have a lot. Vrushti said to me, Rich, talking to you about weight loss is like talking to ChatGPT. The stuff just comes out of you, the numbers, everything. And I thought that was the greatest compliment I ever received, frankly. And I give that compliment I said that to you. You're like ChatGPT when I talk to you about the computer stuff. Like anytime I have a problem with the computer, it's like you're like a magician. No, you are. You solve every problem I have because I have low frustration tolerance for all that cruddy programming. So, but anyway,
you need a
this
tech
would
group.
Be great if we can do it again. And people who were here, they let other people know and whatever.
We'll carry on the comments. We'll carry on the conversation in the comments if there's questions and things. So you'll see it. I'll send you links to where they are. So,
all right. Thanks, Alex. Have a good night.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Have a great weekend.
Okay. Bye. You too.